Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. This podcast is for anybody with a brain who wants to improve their brain function and to optimize their recovery. My name is Kevin Ballister. I'm a severe traumatic brain injury survivor, creator of AdventuresInBrainInjury.com, creator of FeedABrain.com, and author of How to Feed a Brain Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. This episode is brought to you by Revive Treatment Centers, a multidisciplinary neurorehabilitation clinic in Denver, Colorado. You can find them at revivecenters.net. With me is my magnificent co-host, Michelle Malmberg, acquired brain injury survivor ×2, who is here with me to share the adventure. How's it going, Michelle?
Very well. Hello again, Kevin. And you're on the road again, Kevin.
I'm actually at Revive Treatment Centers right now.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Terrific. That's fabulous. On your way to
LA to speak for the World Congress, the World Congress on Brain Mapping and Therapeutics. And then I'm going to San Diego to present for Bastyr University, and then I'll be heading, I think, to Dallas and meeting up with my business partner, and then we're going to drive down to Austin for Paleo Effects.
Fabulous. Word's getting out. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
That's great. And today we have such an exciting guest on our adventure.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I would like to introduce Dr. Titus Chu, and
please do.
We'll get to our
feature presentation.
Yeah, feature presentation. That's right. So Dr. Titus Chu, as I was mentioning earlier, he has been on my radar for years. He is so well respected in his neurology community and a constant reference for many other functional neurologists and patients. So his formal biography, that was mine. Dr. Titus Chu is an award-winning teacher, international speaker, author, and functional neurologist who specializes in post-concussion syndrome. He is on a mission to transform the face of healthcare for the 1 billion people around the world struggling with brain and mental disorders. He has a deep passion for teaching and had the honor to speak at the 2017 Institute for Functional Medicine's annual international conference on the brain. He was also recently featured on Dr. Mark Hyman's groundbreaking documentary, Broken Brain. Dr. Chu consults with patients from all over the world, both online and in person at his Integrative Neurology Center, which was co-founded with his wife and partner, located in Berkeley, California. And his new book, Brain Save, ! The 6-week plan to heal your brain from concussions, injuries, and trauma, comes out in spring 2018. So we're just on the cusp of this coming out. I'm very excited. This is a great marriage, an adventure in brain injury, and someone who is going to guide us to the healing. Welcome, Dr. Titus Chu.
Thanks so much for that very kind introduction, Michelle, and nice chatting with you again, Kevin.
Yes, indeed. It is great to have you here. I actually, you, Michelle, you probably knew of Titus before I did. I saw him on the Broken Brain docuseries, and I reached out to him. And,
yes, and now, well done. And I'm just quite impressed that I was ahead of you on getting to know Dr. Titus's work because you're just so up on it all. But it's great that we're all connected now, and it's wonderful to see and hear that work like your book, Dr. Hyman's work, the Broken Brain series, all of this is starting to come together. The film Concussion, somebody just asked me, a friend of mine, have you seen the film Concussion, the documentary? And, so word is getting out, and now Dr. Titus has a book coming out. This is great. Just great.
Yeah, it's all bubbling up.
Welcome to the adventure, Dr. Titus Chu.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that introduction, and thanks so much for having me on your podcast, Kevin. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. I first learned about Dr. Chu from the Broken Brain docu-series, which was fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes as well. It was Dr. Mark Hyman's Broken Brain series, which is, I mean, as we've talked about, this stuff's really bubbling up. It's really coming to the surface. And I want to thank you for the work you're doing to bring it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. I really am on a mission to get this information to as many people out there that need to hear it. And there are a lot of people out there, you know.
Well, it sounds like we're on a very similar mission. So what got you? What's your story? What got you into functional medicine and functional neurology?
So my story started years ago. I was actually living overseas and working in Japan. And one day I was on my way to work on my scooter, and I got hit by a car. And the trauma from it was so severe that I ended up breaking 3 ribs. I dislocated my shoulder, and I was wearing a helmet at the time, but when I kind of came to, I realized it had fallen off because of the impact. I really thank God that I was wearing a helmet, because honestly, if I wasn't, I wouldn't be speaking to you guys today. And so I ended up being brought to the emergency room, and they did all the tests, and they said everything was quote unquote fine outside of the broken bones and shoulder. But as you guys know, afterwards I ended up in chronic pain, and I didn't fully recover. And so I tried everything within conventional medicine, physical therapy. I took their pain meds, and nothing really worked. And so I was pretty much about to give up hope. And I had the fortune I traveled back to the United States for a vacation. And my brother at the time, he is a practicing chiropractor. And within just a few sessions, I remember that 3rd session, he did a treatment, and virtually all my pain, my shoulder and my neck pain had like melted away. And my mind was blown. And so at that point, I'm like, what do I need to do to learn this stuff so I can do it for other people? And so I dove deep went back to school, and I just soaked up as much as I could learn in school, but as well as seminars, reading books. And a lot of the things that I learned about nutrition and about natural medicine, I started applying to my own life. And a lot of my other chronic health issues started to resolve. So I became a firm believer in natural medicine. Along the way, when I was in school, I actually went to a functional neurology seminar, and I was that just blew my mind even more. I was like, what is this stuff like? Because in school, I'd go to these seminars and I'd learn protocol, and even as a student, I get pretty good results running these protocols that I learn in seminars. But then after a while, there'll be some patients of mine who the protocols didn't work. And so I found neurology to be this amazing framework to understand like why these things work, and if they don't work, what can I do about it? And in fact, like create my own protocols. And so I just fell in love with neurology and that framework, and really embrace that model of understanding that a lot of the root cause for a lot of patients with more chronic health issues, even outside of the brain, typical neurological symptoms like brain fog or dizziness, even things like autoimmunity or leaky gut can actually be rooted in the nervous system. And so I found functional neurology to be a fantastic, fantastic tool.
That's awesome. I was at the International Symposium on Clinical Neuroscience, and you used to teach for Ted Carrick, for the Carrick Institute. When I was there, the first time I was there, Dr. Carrick hopped up, and the first thing he said was, this stuff is so cool. It was like, yes, it is. We actually did an episode with Dr. Jeremy Schmo, one of the first functional neurologists we interviewed, and it's called exactly that. This stuff is so cool. Because I hear you. Like,
Jeremy's great.
yeah, it sounds like your brother is a chiropractor. You got back after this accident, and your brother starts doing some natural modalities, and you begin to get better. So you're like, whoa, this is cool. And then you go to school, and you learn about functional neurology, and you're like, whoa, this is cool. So
exactly, this is awesome.
And I have to jump in to say, Dr. Chu, that how inspiring. I'm sitting here in awe listening to your story, that you go from having your head so injured that your body suffers so terribly, and now you are at the top of the functional neurology game, and so well respected for the work you're doing. So clearly, is your experience the reason why you chose neurology?
Absolutely. It was a lot of my experience, both as a patient, but also, like I said, as a doctor. My personality is like, if something, if I'm working on something, if I'm helping a patient recover, I'm struggling with something in my own life, I always want to answer the question, why is this happening, and get to the root cause of that. And I found neurology, both for my personal life, but also as a professional helping patients, is an amazing tool to really get deeper into the underlying root causes for patients' different symptoms.
Nice. And then you talk about root cause neurology. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I practice what I call as root cause neurology, and it's a unique blend of everything that I've studied over the past decade, blending neurology and nutrition, functional medicine, chiropractic, acupuncture, and a bunch of different Eastern spiritual traditions. And the whole thing with root cause neurology, how it distinguishes from conventional neurology, is rather than just focusing on symptoms, again, I want to answer that question for my patients. What is the root cause for their symptoms? For example, many of my patients with post-concussion syndrome, they experience lightheadedness, or they might experience vertigo or dizziness. Some of them, the imbalance or the root cause is because of some issue in their inner ear or their vestibular system. And so with that workup, then I'll have to target treatment towards the inner ear. I'll do vestibular rehab. I'll do eye exercises. I'll use transcutaneous trigeminal nerve stimulation for those patients. But for some other patients who have post-concussion syndrome, they might have their symptoms, and the root cause, after I do the analysis, is that their adrenals have crashed, or their HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is just fried. And so that approach, requires a completely different, treatment. For example, they might need more time to relax. They might need better stress management, breathing techniques. I might prescribe adaptogenic herbs. And so the treatments are completely tailored to what that specific person needs. And that's what is root cause neurology.
Nice. So you said a few things in there that I gotta circle back on. So you talked about the HPA axis, which we talk about in depth with Ali Minor. So for our listeners, go check that one out. And then you talked about transcutaneous trigeminal nerve stimulation. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so transcutaneous trigeminal nerve stimulation, or just nerve stimulation, falls under this broader category that's known as electromedicine. And I truly believe that electromedicine is the future of healthcare, not even just neurology, but healthcare. And so it's based on these ideas that within our nervous system, for example, on our face or in our jaw, we have all these little nerves and receptors that send signals into this area of our nervous system called the brainstem, for example, in this example. And so using that idea, we can actually use specific electrical modalities to really juice up those pathways and light up the brainstem. And again, for a lot of patients of mine who have post-concussion syndrome, they might experience TMJ pain, or they might experience eye pain, or pain behind their eye, or headaches. And a lot of the time, the root cause for that is due to imbalances in the brainstem. And so by using these electromedical therapies, I can actually target those specific neuronal pathways to bring balance. The awesome, exciting stuff is, again, not only to help patients with post-concussion syndrome, but there's actually, there is a doctor who recently did some research into rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition. And he had a group of patients who just did not respond to like the typical medications, or they didn't want all the side effects. And so they did like a study, and they were like a research pilot, and he used very similar techniques, but in his case, he did transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation, so activating the vagus nerve non-invasively with electricity, and he found that a majority of the patients were able to get off their medications, because what they did the research, the vagus nerve, as you guys probably know, not only impacts the nervous system, but has powerful connections with the autonomic nervous system as well as the immune system. And so, yeah, trigeminal vagal nerve stimulation is this form of treatments that we call electromedicine, which I really think is the future of medicine.
That's awesome. I'm over here at Revive, and we use TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. Is that similar?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a similar concept where the TMS focuses on different areas of like the cortex and whatnot. But what's cool about trigeminal or vagal nerve stimulators is we can actually specifically fire up areas of the brainstem, so what I call subcortical regions. And so TMS is fantastic for things related to more cortical imbalances like in the brain, where I find the trigeminal and vagal nerve stimulation is great for people who have a root cause in things like their brainstem. And so, yeah, a combination of using all those different approaches is really amazing, because all it really is we're just taking advantage and harnessing the power of our senses to light up and activate specific neuronal pathways in our brain.
Wow.
Well,
non-invasively. That's the amazing
exactly. As you say, as you posted on Instagram, your brain is connected to every single organ in your body.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just astounding to hear these stories that somebody's stiff joints respond to brain treatment.
Yeah.
Somebody's autoimmune disease responds to electromedical treatment. This is fascinating.
Isn't that amazing? It's all connected. It's really all connected.
That's what Michelle's son tells us. It's all connected. Of course, Mom.
I would just marvel at that when he would, because as I was recovering from my second brain injury due to a strep infection, autoimmune results.
Yeah.
The adult onset pandas, he at the age of 8, he's just shaking his head saying, well, but of course it would be. It's all connected, Mom. And I couldn't get the doctors to put all the pieces together. They're still operating in their silos. So really we're so fortunate that our city is a major city, Calgary, Alberta. And we do have a few functional neurologists now. We don't have the capacity that your clinic has, COBA, and the other centers around the United States, but it's starting to come, and I appreciate how many people, Dr. Chu, were you talking about were affected by concussion, and why you decided to specialize in post-concussion syndrome?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, concussion, TBI, post-concussion syndrome, it really is a silent global epidemic. I mean, in the United States alone, it's responsible for 30% of all injury-related deaths, right? And TBI accounts for approximately 10 million deaths and or hospitalizations every year in the world. So it doesn't just impact people in the United States. Just like Kevin said at the beginning of his podcast, anyone with a brain can be impacted by TBI. And so the interesting thing for me, though, is I never set out to be a post-concussion syndrome specialist. Like I said before, like, yeah, I mean, I was in this really horrible car accident. I bumped my head really hard, but the biggest symptoms I experienced at that time was chronic neck and back pain. And so, I told you my whole story of how I dove deep into that world, studied functional neurology, functional medicine, nutrition, all these different modalities. And I put together what I call root cause neurology. And I'd actually get pretty great results. And in addition, because I taught for the Carrick Institute for many years, I was referred a lot of patients with more complex neurological symptoms. But what I found working with them, and like I said, I get good results. But just like before I was introduced to neurology, I started to come across a certain population of patients where I would run the protocols that I had put together over the years, but they wouldn't respond to them. And I was just like, what's going on here? And again, my personality is like, I like to answer and ask the question, why? Why aren't they responding to care? And so I'd go deeper into their history. And sure enough, I found out that the majority of them had a history of a head injury, whether it was like a serious injury like Kevin's, one not as serious, like more mild like mine, or several mild ones. That was a pattern that I started to see over and over again. And as you guys know, the approach to post-concussion syndrome is completely different than any type of health issue out there, even other neurological conditions. And so I dove deep into that world, into the world of post-concussion syndrome. And I went to seminars, I researched articles, I read books, I learned as much as I could from, neurology, also looking back at Eastern practices of Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. And I started to learn a lot of different approaches to it that were different than what I was actually doing at the time. But the thing with me is I like to put it to the test in my own life. So I started to apply a lot of these different treatments to my own self. And guess what? A lot of my more chronic and darker health issues started to resolve. Like, it's interesting when I look back on my history, like as a child, young kid growing up, I had a really good upbringing. Like, I was raised by two very loving parents. I was like a happy kid for the most part. But when I actually sat down and I looked at my history within the past 10 years, 15 years, I noticed that I started to deal with a lot of symptoms that I never did before, like anger issues, irritability, brain fog, and depression, and like excessive worry. And I never had these issues before. And it dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, I actually was struggling with post-concussion syndrome and I didn't even realize it.
Oh,
it wasn't
wow.
until, yeah, exactly. Like, I didn't set out to be a post-concussion syndrome specialist. I didn't know I had it. And when I started to apply a lot of the treatments that I learned, going to all these seminars to my own life, like a ketogenic diet, and I started taking high-dose fish oils, I started doing things to support BDNF and NRF2, and I started doing low-level laser, a lot of the things that I do for my concussion patients, and a lot of those deeper, darker symptoms started to resolve. And so it was this strange, like, diagnosis in retrospect, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
I think that's super, super poignant, because there are so many people out there that have had concussions, had brain injuries, don't even know it, and they come back and circle back. So that's exactly what you're saying.
Knowing what I know now, Dr. Chu, is I listen to other people who have had a head injury. For example, one of the moms at school a friend there. She fell skiing and knocked her head, and given the standard recommendation, lay low, 6 weeks, dim room, not too much light, but nobody's recognizing the more subtle impacts nor looking longer term. And then one of my son's friends was at sailing camp. We're very fortunate to have a reservoir near us, and so the kiddos get to learn how to sail. And the boom swung round. It was his first time sailing. The boom swung round and smacked him on the side of the head, and he was knocked down. He was very uncomfortable for a couple of days. And I very gently tried to impress upon the mom, a very, very well-educated, very astute mom, how serious this is. And so here's a 10-year-old boy who's sustained his, probably not his first, but his most obvious brain injury. And just thinking as all his body systems are just starting to come online, he hasn't hit puberty yet, what impact does this massive head injury have at the age of 10?
Exactly. And that's the scary thing, because it's not even just the massive ones that, cause big problems. I actually, as I was researching for my book, there's a recent study that just came out in last February where it looked at the brains of a bunch of different teenagers who had suffered head injuries and died, but not because of the head injury. They died for other reasons.
Okay.
And so they did, you see what I mean? There was these kids who had head injuries. They had died from a different cause. So then the scientists were able to look at what was happening in their brains. And then they found that all of them had evidence for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is pretty much early Alzheimer's.
But Dr. Chu is bringing up the fact that it's not just the noted major concussive injuries, it's the minor undocumented injuries that are accumulating.
Let's fire back up. Let's go. I was saying, you said you didn't know that you had it, which I think is so poignant, because there are so many people out there that have had brain injuries, maybe even when they were children, and they don't have a memory of it. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was just like this really kind of metaphysical experience I had, because it was not metaphysical, or I meant it was a very meta experience, because here I am, this post-concussion syndrome expert, and I didn't even realize I had post-concussion syndrome. Just do this, reverse. It's just so ironic. It was this diagnosis in retrospect. I'm just like, hold a second. Like, I never had anger issues growing up. I was never that irritable. I mean, I'd get hangry, but not like, like uncomfortably so. I wasn't really depressed. I wasn't totally unmotivated. I had some health issues that was resolved through basic dietary changes and chiropractic care, but none of these darker neurological symptoms. And that, I realized, all started around the time after my initial car accident over a decade ago. And so from there, I kind of did a workup. I know, yeah, exactly. I was putting the pieces together. I kind of did this workup on myself that I would do for all my patients, and kind of thought to myself, wait a second, when I was 10 years old, I actually suffered not a massive head injury, but I was ice skating at my best friend's birthday party, and we were racing, right? And so he was going really fast, I was going fast, and I tripped and I smacked my head right on my forehead, right? And what's right behind there is your prefrontal lobe. And that's really important for a developing kid, because that's the area of our nervous systems that are really important for judgment, for organizing our thoughts, for inhibiting unwanted behaviors. And so I probably had a mild injury to that when I was 10. And then the next year after that, when I was 11, I did the same exact thing. Same birthday party with my friend. We were racing, and I did the same thing. But the funny thing is, right, you guys know, the prefrontal lobe helps you learn from your mistakes. So yeah, I think I had injured that. That first,
That's something I actually
Yeah,
want to bring up. That's so interesting because I was thinking of how difficult it is to put the pieces together when your brain is what's putting pieces together, right? So what
exactly.
I
It's
often
this
say
weird
is,
meta.
yeah, it's what I often say is it's the how can you it's hard to tell that you're in a brain fog when you're in a brain fog because you're in a brain fog, right?
Yeah, it's like the mirrors that go on for infinity, you know?
Yes, yes, that's right.
And you know, and what you said about like so many people have concussions or have experienced brain injuries. Many people say to me like, you know, like, well, I haven't experienced a brain injury, not one like yours, anyways. And often I say, you know, brain injuries are different. Like the way our brains are wired and networked,
Exactly.
like they're all different. So I'm not going to go say like my brain injury was worse than your brain injury.
Sure.
Or anything of that sort. I mean, there you can have a concussion and experience really devastating symptoms, whereas you could have a serious diffuse axonal injury that lands you in a coma. And like, yeah, I have difficulties and whatnot, but it's just interesting. And JJ Virgin says just about everybody's had a brain injury, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you bring up a lot of great points, Kevin. Like, for example, like a lot of people with post-concussion syndrome. That's why I think it's a total silent global epidemic. Might not even express symptoms immediately, like myself. Or some people might have a small ding to their head. A lot of patients I've worked with, just a minor jolt, maybe even a car accident where they had some whiplash and didn't even bump their head and develop massive concussion symptoms. And so everyone's unique. And in my new book, Brain Save, I actually talk about 12 of the biggest obstacles of healing, which I also think are one of the main reasons why some people develop concussion symptoms immediately or very powerfully, and some people have massive head injuries and don't develop anything at all. It's a lot of these 12 obstacles to healing. So that's a really great point you bring up there.
Well, and there's an interesting stat that our functional neurologist here gave me. He said that there was a study that could register brain injury when a car hit a solid object at 5 kilometers. Okay, we're in metric.
Wow.
5 kilometers.
Yeah.
So that's just a couple miles an hour. So it doesn't take much to rattle the brain inside the cranium. Dr. Chu, tell us please more about the injury, the cumulative injury that young teenagers had been discovered. I'm not saying this properly. Please tell us more about the cumulative injuries sustained by young people that had teenagers being diagnosed with early
CTE,
Alzheimer's.
right? You're talking about CTE?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Which is, define that for our audience.
Sure. And so as I was doing research for my upcoming book that's going to be released actually later this week, which I'm really excited about, I found there's a study that was done.
Actually, by the time this is out, the book will be available.
Yay.
Yeah, excellent. And so, this study that I came across that was done just last month in February, it looked at a group of teenagers who had suffered a head injury, okay? And the head injuries weren't even that severe, but they had suffered head injuries. They had died not due to the head injuries, they had died for other reasons, right? And so you have these teenagers had a head injury, died for a different cause. And so the scientists were able to then look at what was happening in their brains. And what they found was the majority of the teenagers, and they were like 17 years old, right? They had evidence for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which you guys know is pretty much an accelerated form. It looks like an accelerated form of Alzheimer's, but they were 17 years old. And the crazy thing about it they didn't even necessarily need to have like massive concussion symptoms. So meaning they had these minor head injuries and multiple ones. That was actually a big point of the study, is like they had several minor or mild ones just like I had, but they didn't really, not all of them had a lot of symptoms. But when they actually looked at what was happening in their brains, evidence of tauopathy or like these funked up proteins in their brain, neurofibrillary tangles, everything you see in an Alzheimer's patient. But Alzheimer's patients usually develop that over decades from, 50s onwards. These were 17-year-old kids. So again, this is a silent, massive global epidemic of, I mean, from my experience, like my story that I told you, I can both speak to personally how I developed a lot of these psychological, darker, neurological symptoms over the years, I think as a direct consequence of mild head injuries. But in my practice too, professionally as a doctor, I see so many patients who have anxiety, or I have so many patients who are depressed, or I have so many patients who I've seen who are like bipolar, and I do a workup and I do the history. Guess what? The majority of them have a history of head injuries. Again, not necessarily something massive where they get knocked out unconscious. It could be like minor falls like I did growing up, like when I was ice skating, just these minor head injuries over time that were unaddressed. And so I actually think a lot of people out there who are diagnosed as having a psychiatric or psychological problem, it's not, especially if they've had a history of head injury. It's a neurobiological problem that's rooted in the networks of the brain. And so with that understanding, a completely different approach to care is needed. I'm really like passionate about this.
Oh, well, we can tell, can't we, Kevin?
Tell, and we
oh my
feel
gosh,
the same way.
And so you've got a 6-week plan to wrap our heads around this and how to save the brain. Your book is called Brain Save! !
Tell us about your book.
Sure, yeah. So my book's called Brain Save! The 6-week plan to heal your brain from concussions, brain injuries, and trauma without drugs or surgery. And so the book is really a culmination of the years in practice I've had working with thousands of patients, teaching doctors, but also healing my own brain through post-concussion syndrome. And so I go deep into the understanding of it, because I have so many patients who come to my office after a head injury, and they're just, it's like they're frustrated and they're upset because they've been to their doctors and the doctors just write it off. They're like, it's just in your head. There's nothing wrong with you. The tests are normal. And that's so frustrating, isn't it?
Yet it's true. It is in your head. It's very true, but it's like,
exactly.
Hey, that's my head. Let's fix this thing,
Exactly. That's one of the chapters in my book. It is all in your head, but not in the way that they had told you.
Right.
It's the root cause for post-concussion syndrome is rooted in the neural networks in your brain, which are encased in the hard cranium of your head, right?
Yeah.
And so with that understanding, again, treatments are completely possible. Healing is totally within a person's reach. And so I go deep into like the root cause for post-concussion syndrome. I talk about the 12 major obstacles preventing people from healing. And at the end of the book, in part 3 of the book, is actually this entire 6-week plan that I put together. So in my practice, I think similar to the Revive centers and some centers throughout the world, like Jeremy Schmoes, we have these 5-day intensive brain camps. What I call in my office, it's called the 5-day Brain Save Recovery Program.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized not everyone can fly in for the 5-day program. Not everyone gets accepted because there's limited spaces. Also, not everyone's a good fit. But I want to get this information out to as many people as possible, which is why I wrote the book. And so the 6-week plan in the book is kind of like a culmination of all the different things that I've seen work with patients, that I've seen work with myself, that I've talked to other doctors about and taught them. And so I lay it out. I talk about, okay, here are best foods to eat and avoid. Here are the top 5 brain safe supplements. Here's some great lifestyle things that you can do to help start healing. Here's some mental exercises and meditations you can do at home. So it's a complete comprehensive program. It's a foundational plan. In no way, am I making a claim that's going to cure your concussion, but it's a great start, because I've found, again, so many people out there having suffered a concussion, either not knowing they have one, number one, or number two, they know they have one. They go to their primary care, go to their neurologist, and they're given nothing. They're just like, go home and rest, take some of these medications, put your life on hold and hope for the best. And that's not good enough. That's really not good enough. And so that's why I wrote the book. Is like, okay, here are some fundamental things. In my practice, I'm always looking for these key leverage points, meaning what are the few actions a person can take that'll have the biggest results in their life. And so that's really what the 6-week Brain Save plan is. Here are some major key leverage points for people to help them heal from concussion.
That's beautiful, and that's as an author as well, that's exactly what drives me. And I just appreciate it so much. Like my goal is to help the most people in the greatest way possible, and it's like across the board, provide the resources that I wish I had. That's a piece of it, and that's exactly what you're doing. And I'm honored to know you, Titus. It's really amazing what you're doing. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so before I get there, I want to say the same thing for you, Kevin, and for you, Michelle. Like, I think we've been blessed to have resources like we do. But regardless, having access to resources is one thing, but also having the stamina, having the persistence, and just like the passion to really heal ourselves is just, that's on a whole nother level. So I want to acknowledge
that's all another podcast for sure.
It's like mindset. You have to start with that mindset that healing is possible, because outside of that, it's just, and that's really honestly the biggest message of the book. So anyways, in answer to your question, people could find out more about me by checking out my website, drtituschuu.com. That's drtituschuu.com. And then I'm also on Facebook as Dr. Titus Chu, and Instagram as well. And my book is coming out very soon, April 10th. And by the time this podcast is launched, you guys will be able to, it'll be available for you. And I'm really excited about it. I'm so excited for it. So thanks again for having me on here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I want to please, Dr. Chu, acknowledge your very talented wife and partner in Coba Clinic, Dr. Natasha, who's also regarded as a very gentle healer. And so the two of you, I want to thank you both, because you would not be able to do this work without her support and she without you. So a big thank you to both of you for putting in and dedicating your life to helping so many other people. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Ditto that. Well, thank you so much, Titus. How about that, Michelle?
Fabulous. Yes.
Yeah.
He is as sincere in his voice as he looks in his photographs. I look forward to meeting him in person one day, because healers are gentle souls, and I just get the sense from him, a very warm sense, that he would be someone to trust completely when you're recovering from brain injury.
Yeah, I get, the feelings we get are so important.
Yes.
I've been talking about this, like our brain receives input from our senses, right? And
and Dr. Chu.
When I was in school, I was told there were 5 senses. There are way more than 5 senses, and we'll get to that at some point. But when you're around somebody and you just feel their warmth and their compassion, and it feels inviting, that's a sense, and that's what I get from him as well.
Yes, that sense of safety and security and trust.
And trust, yeah. Well, if you would like to support us, head over to patreon.com/AIBI and leave us a buck or two for a tip for each time we do a podcast. That's super appreciative. Additionally, if you could leave us a review on iTunes, that's another way to really help us get this word out. So you can get there by going to adventuresinbraininjury.com/iTunes, and it takes you right to the iTunes thing. It's kind of tricky. You gotta open up iTunes, then click write a review, and then it'll give you the thing to write a review. But it's very helpful. It's also go ahead.
There's a kind reward. Some reciprocity is exchanged with the reviews. You've been very generous, gifting a copy of your book.
That's true. Yes.
So we do appreciate your comment and taking time to listen to the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every episode we will highlight someone who left a review. We'll highlight a review that was left, and we will send you a copy of How to Feed a Brain: Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair.
And clearly the word's getting out with all this traveling you're doing and the speaking engagements you've got, and congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. And if you've read the book, or if you're reading the book, and you'd like to help spread this word even more and really help us get the word out and influence more brains and more lives, if you could leave me a review on Amazon for the book, that would be extremely helpful. You can go to amazon.com/review, and it'll take you right to the spot on Amazon. So you just need to click write a review, and ta-da.
And for those of us in Canada, it's amazon.ca.
For those of us, there you go. Whatever your country code is.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
Terrific. Well done, my friend. Thanks again for having me on.
Always a pleasure, Michelle. Thank you.
Someone take me to a doctor.